My next guest is Bernhard Guenther. He's a psycho-spiritual researcher, teacher, and guide whose work explores the deeper architecture of reality and evolutionary changes facing humanity in what esoteric traditions call the time of transition. Bernhard, welcome to the Smoke Trail.
Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited that, well, first of all, we're neighbors.
Yes.
And I've been a fan of your and your wife's work for a while. Discovered you not that long ago, but became a subscriber and was following you guys. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to reach out and see if you'd like to join me. And it turns out you live 5 minutes from me.
Yes, here we are.
So this is our neighborly meetup. Super interesting times we're in. And as I was telling you, my spiritual journey has been the last 4 or 5 years. And so I'm a newbie to this compared to you've been doing work for decades now. But I'm a fast learner, so I'm fairly up to speed on things. And I think there's so many interesting things happening now. I'm waking up at the right moment in terms of the Kali Yuga and all the other things that are happening. And love to just have a dialogue around what you see and what's going on and what's important for people to know. And our audience is primarily business leaders, but anybody who wants to follow, but that's who my friends are. So we've been building there, and I kind of look at the Smoke Trail as something where I'm sharing my journey, bringing guests on who can help share and bring insights and information. And we're hopefully opening the Overton window a bit to get, mainstream leaders to think about the world a little differently.
Yeah.
And try to understand it from a different perspective than perhaps what certainly I was living and what a lot of them are living. So,
yeah. Excellent.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'd love to maybe a little origin story if you don't mind. Tell me a little background how you got to this.
Yeah. Right. So give you like the nutshell. Well, when people always sometimes ask me why do you do what you do, usually I can answer the shortest version in 2 sentences, because I always questioned early on in my life there must be more to life, more than we've been told and taught, and my suffering. I had to figure myself out, right? So those 2 things were the driving force. But it started early on in childhood, growing up in Germany. I was born in Los Angeles, by the way.
Oh.
My dad escaped Eastern Germany back when there was still the Berlin Wall. He escaped from there. And my mom escaped from communist Poland.
Oh, wow.
And then he fulfilled his dream to come to the US. Went to UCLA, got his doctor's in engineering. I was born during that time. But then when I was 1 year old, they moved back to Germany. So I got the citizenship out of this too. So
yeah.
But I grew up in Germany, Munich, and early on, just being a sensitive child, always not being able to fit in, right? And I remember after I graduated high school, going to university, I did what everybody else was doing, my friends. Like I almost come from the opposite end as you did. So my friends were getting into business, creating a company, let's make money and all of this. And I could not relate to it. I could not, I had other questions, right? I was just like, I'm not interested in the material world. I'm not interested in career, family, house, nothing. Who am I? What is this life about? There must be more, right? So there was a deep questioning already in hand with me. And then what I call divine intervention, one of my friends back then, after I graduated high school, I was studying at the University of Munich, introduced me to drums, played the drums. And I was also big into music, I was listening to music. And I remember the first time I sat on this drum set, I had it as a natural knack. I had literally had my first transcendental experience of just feeling one with the universe and just in this rhythm and music, and just I've never had that kind of experience. And then when I decided that moment, this is what I want to do with my life. I just want to be a drummer. That's it, right? Do the music thing. So I, very dedicated, played 8 hours a day, and actually then moved to the US in 1994 to LA at the age of 22 to study drums and percussion, this very popular, very great music school there. And I stayed in LA, right? So played in bands, just chasing the dream, so to speak, played our jobs. But you know, during this time, as I was expressing myself musically, it helped me to also express emotions I couldn't express. I already started doing shadow work during that time, playing very heavy, like emotional music to kind of like use it for processing without even knowing I was processing, right? But then I also become disillusioned with the whole music scene, music business, and all of this, right? I mean, I had my band, we toured and all of this. I did the whole rock and roll thing. And then I got introduced from my friends to went some raves, some desert parties back in the 90s. We always went out to Mojave Desert and kind of like with the generator. And then I was introduced to mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah.
So that was a big turning point. Got into Terence McKenna in the 90s. And then even I was so profoundly affected by the mushroom experience, I even stopped partying and like, I need to explore this myself. So I locked myself into my rehearsal room and like took 5-7 grams of mushrooms, like just go, go, go. And in these experiences, like a psychonaut, was really fascinating because I always associated mushrooms with like a spiritual experience, maybe seeing more, you know, but I encountered forces, beings, aliens, all kinds of entities. So I realized, hold on, there's a whole other reality. There are other forces influencing us. So that's when I first came face to face with these spiritual realities and other beings that affect us, both malevolent, benevolent, and all of this. So it just blew everything open.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, I got more into conspiracy. I found David Icke, so blew that out into the open, right?
Yeah.
So went down the rabbit hole basically. But at the same time, a lot of my own personal stuff came up, right? So I was dealing with depression and just, you know, stuff I didn't know how to handle. And I remember waking up one morning, I was literally crying in fetus position. Like I was so depressed. I didn't know what's going on in my life. My band was breaking up. I was just working at odd jobs, you know. And I had this voice in my head literally like saying to me, like, you need to figure yourself out or you're going to die. You're going to kill yourself. And I went on that day to a bookstore. And then synchronistically, I saw this book on the table there by this guy, Krishnamurti. Never heard of him, but his head, you know, with his, you know, white hair and like very stern. And it says freedom from the known.
Yeah.
And I read that book and it blew my mind wide open, especially the line that really set everything off, where he said, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Yeah.
So I realized what people are doing, the world is not in alignment, but we're trying to adjust to it constantly. The rat's race and going after and this and that, you know what I mean? And that's why I realized that a lot of people are depressed or sick because they're following something that's not inherent who they are.
Yeah.
Right. So that started my interest into spirituality. I got into Alan Watts, you know, these kind of things. And then, you know, more into like what I would call mainstream spirituality, Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, Deepak Chopra back in those days. But then I went deeper, right? I definitely got then into more, I was introduced to yoga, body work. I had a gift all of a sudden I found for healing work and body work. So I pursued that. I had my own practice for 20 years in Los Angeles, right? Working that, I was introduced to a mentor of mine. And really fast in my whole life trajectory changed from really wanting to just be this drummer and a tour.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I have a healing business. And people come to me wanting to be worked on. So I discovered gifts or talents I didn't even know I had. So I already felt there's something else guiding me, right? Because even like back in the 90s, I got into Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Awakening the Giant Within.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All of that, like, you know.
That's where we crossed over because that was from a business standpoint.
Exactly. Now I was also applying that, even my band, and I was visualizing and like this and that. And I remember Tony Robbins' 3-month plan, 6 months, 2-year, 10-year, and then visual, you know, all of this. And did the best I could, but it didn't happen. So I also realized back, you know, even looking back, you cannot override what God has in plan for you.
No.
No matter how much you're trying to manifest, visualize, you cannot force your reality onto that's not aligned with you.
Yeah.
It just creates more stress, depression, right? You just gotta let go and align. So put me on that path. And then I started, you know, I was living by myself in Topanga, and I got deep into esotericism, psychology, discovered Carl Jung, shadow work and all of that, somatic work. And early on, I realized, and it's a foundation for the work I'm doing now with my wife as well, that the work is twofold. it's inner and outer work.
Yeah.
Right. Because I found too many people there just focus on inner work, right, or just psychological work or spiritual work, and then they avoid what's happening in the world or not even aware of it, and can easily then get manipulated by evil because they don't understand evil, which we saw, for example, with the pandemic, so to speak, or many people kind of fell for it who I thought should know better, so to speak, no judgment. Or then you see it also had issues with the so-called truther movement, conspiracy movement, which is always out there, the cabal, Illuminati, but they're not involved in any inner work, projecting their shadow, right? So for me, it's about psycho-spiritual work, doing the inner work, the psychological work through shadow work, trauma work, somatic work, embodiment, all of that, absolutely. And that process you cannot force as well, right?
Yeah.
And then a more spiritual orientation to a higher nature, to something that is guiding you bigger than you are. I don't really adhere to any specific religion or spiritual teaching modality. I draw from esoteric Christianity, integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo, Sufism.
That's what attracted me to you guys. You were the same things I discovered later.
Yeah.
You were deep into.
And by the way, it's interesting to speak to you, because I came from the other side, still into my 40s. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I just living in the now. I didn't care about my future, money, who cares? But then with meeting of law, I had also faced, I have to also integrate the material world.
Yeah.
I have to learn, with what we have going on, some business skills. I have to understand money, not to reject it. There's a spiritual way of this money is evil and all of this. And I had to analyze my beliefs around it. Yeah. Right. To integrate this as well without rejecting.
Yeah.
So that's been then my journey over the past 2 years, to become more grounded in the material reality, because I saw a lot of people in the conspiracy world and spiritual world also like demonizing, capitalism or business people and all of this, right? I mean, but no, hold on. We need to, and that's why I'm really drawn to Sri Aurobindo's yoga. As you know, he's not about escaping life, but bringing the divine here
into life.
Spiritualized. Yeah. All life is yoga, right? With this, not to reject anything, but infuse everything with spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's probably your path as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I mean, there's so many parallels. I won't spend a lot of time on my story, but I'll mention the things that kind of resonated. And grew up in a very traumatic family situation, a lot of abuse and things. Blocked it all out. Mm-hmm. Didn't remember anything, but knew I had to escape. And my escape was we had no money. I had to go find ways to make money.
Yeah.
And that was how I could get away from them.
Yeah.
And by doing that, and then I had kids early, and so I had a family. So I had a reason. They saved my life. I had a reason to live.
You had a responsibility too.
Yeah. And so I had this, crazy entrepreneurial career, and made a lot of money and lost a lot of money. And I kept doing it a bunch of times. Didn't realize I had these shadow things that were, causing me to, do that too. But, then when my initial awakening started happening, there was a period after the shadow work where I was like, well, I don't want money, and I don't need any of this stuff. And
almost the other,
I was kind of rejecting it. And it for like a year, I was like, I don't really know if I can do what I do, what I've been doing anymore. Yeah. And that settled down. I got to a more of an integrative view, which is, of course, it's part of this realm. When we talk about embodiment, it's about everything. It's about the whole story. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I have the ability to do great things. I can go travel. I can go speak. I can influence. And I got this download that said, you're a globetrotting leader of leaders, bringing God's love and light to the world. Mm-hmm. On the what was it, the Rishi machine? This guy in Vegas created this machine that he got a download, and I was using that at my friend's house, and I was like, and that was the message I got. That's not how I talk. It's but I got that, and I was like, oh, okay, well that's integrated. That makes sense. I can do what I do, and my friend group is a bunch of entrepreneurs, and so, and what I'm seeing during my time is that there's a big awakening happening in that world. It's happening in every sector, but there's so many people who are business leaders who are, going on journeys and doing plant medicine and going on retreats and breath work and all kinds of things. And just in the last 5 years, the interest level and the opening to, well, maybe there's something more I've seen it like dramatically change.
Yeah.
And so what I got was, okay, well, that's part of the role. I'm supposed to help with that some way, somehow, some way.
We have the role, and the role will unfold itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always a danger when we become too identified with the mission. Right. So I think that's when the ego hijacks the process, the spiritual bypassing, and I go, you know what I mean? What's called in esotericism the Luciferic temptation, so to speak. You see it in the New Age too. Oh, I'm a starseed. I have a special mission. Like, you can apply it to anywhere. Like the key point is really to have that humility to align with the higher force and understanding. For me, at least, that's the unit.
I completely agree. And the more I learn, the more I feel like I'm gaining a bigger understanding, the more I know I don't know.
Yeah.
And I always remind myself of that. Like, oh, that's why I'm, I keep, touching on different traditions and learning different things. I went really deep on Hawkins. That was one of the things that
Hawkins,
and I have probably, I probably listened to or read all of his books, some of them 20 times, right? So and I get something new every time I listen.
Of course, yes,
Like it's a different level. Oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
So so that was another thing that resonated. And you had an episode not that long ago with another guy here who was maybe studied with Hawkins or was.
Oh, Daniel. Yeah.
That was cool. I like that. Enjoyed that. And and so it's really interesting. But so I'll just say this funny thing, and then let's talk more about some of the things you're seeing. Once I got I cleared my shadows, and I know that there's always something more, right? So we're always healing in different levels, but I cleared a lot of stuff and got my memory back, understood, and then had a different perspective, went through the process of forgiving and then realizing there's nothing to forgive, that it was a plan that was set up so that I could awaken, right? So like it was all for me. But that took a while. And then I was like, well, I need to understand what the heck this stuff is. Like, I don't know. I didn't know the word shadow work. I didn't know alchemy. I didn't know any of this stuff. And so I just went on this journey, and I liken it to kind of the way I would start a company, like as an entrepreneur. Like I would figure out an opportunity or a business need or some kind of need in the market. I would learn everything about it. I would figure out the industry. I'd recruit the right people. I'd write a plan and build a model, and I would raise capital, get the resources I needed, and then I would go execute like crazy.
Yeah.
And I was really good at that and did it a bunch of times. And I kind of did that not because I meant to, but that's what I did with my spiritual journey. So like I probably read 400 books in the last couple of years, and I've watched a million things. And for some in the spiritual community, they'd be like, "That's not how it's done." Like you don't do it that way. Well, it's just my intensity, the focus shifted.
Then you will realize the limitations of the mind, though, right? Like of
100%. But for me, Hawkins helped me the most in that frame, because it gave me a understanding that my mind could just calm down. Like, okay, so there's a framework, there's this. So that gave me
we need frameworks. That's the most important part.
Yeah.
And Lorna, my wife, have worked with thousands of people over the years, right? And there's also the saying, as Carl Jung said, that shoe that fits one perfectly stings another, or, so meaning there's no one approach that fits all.
Yeah.
So it has to be, as Gurdjieff would say, like a living school. Or like Sri Aurobindo would say, that's why a lot of people, when they get into the work of Sri Aurobindo, well, he doesn't really say what to do and give me no rules, because he understands the sadhana, the spiritual practice, is highly customized, individualized, personalized for the person, right?
Yeah.
He even said, I'm big in the Bhagavad Gita, the yoga of divine works, offer everything to the divine. That's the yoga of knowledge, the yoga of the bhakti, devotion, whatever path it is. Some people are even maybe not wired to meditate, he even said. You just put everything into work, but offer it to something else. So the key point is having the self-honesty, humility, and we need a teacher, we need a guide, right? And a teacher and guide doesn't have to be this guru, but, can be books, others, or working with people, whatever it may be. I would not be where I'm at right now with my teachers, mentors, guides that I met along the way. Sometimes they're informal, right? It's not like there can be everyday person that teaches you something. But the key point is, even with Carl Jung's process of individuation, which is a very important part as well, as that it is very personalized to you.
Yeah.
Right. And then you kind of figure that out, or as you go along. There's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, a lot of trial,
right?
Yeah, for sure. There's a tremendous amount of trial and error, and I went through a phase when I was doing the shadow work of like doing a lot of plant medicine.
Yeah,
I did it with a great teacher, Ivan Rados, who's up in BC, who's just an extraordinary individual. Helped me a lot. He removed an entity for me. He helped me a lot with some of the initial stuff. But then I was like, well, wait a minute. I need to understand this. So I was living in California. Our next door neighbor was let's just call him, he had lots of sources.
Yeah.
He's an old deadhead guy and he had lots of sources. So all of a sudden I had access to whatever I needed. And I was like, okay, well, I need to figure this out. I can do this.
Yeah.
I did a lot of journeys on my own, like you, locked myself in a room and just trying to figure it out, not for recreational, to understand it.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of those entities and things, and really a lot of the dark ones I experienced directly. And so I don't recommend this to people.
That's a whole other topic in itself, psychedelics,
Yeah.
medicine plants.
Yeah, well, and for me, it helped. I think it did in 30, what it would have taken 35 years of therapy, and maybe not even that. I think it accelerated my process to clear.
It can open something up. Having worked myself heavily in the 90s, early 2000s, I got into ayahuasca, DMT before the whole ayahuasca.
Before it got super like trendy.
Yeah. So, and I'm not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but I've seen a lot of abuse, a lot of black magic, a lot of issues in the ayahuasca communities, especially down in Peru.
Especially these big group things. I sat as an angel for Yvonne had a men's retreat in Bowen Island last month, and he invited me to come and sit and be an angel for the ceremony. And it was the second time I did that with him, and it's really magical to see him work and to see these men, some of them, all different lives, but successful doctors and different lives, clearing stuff and just seeing him do his work. And in that session just last month, one of the guys there, he recognized there was an entity in him and he did a removal, and I got to be present for it, which was in some ways more powerful than when he did it to me, because I got to witness it, and I was just holding space. But when I see that, I realize, like, this is not a game. You don't play with this stuff. And if you go to these group sessions and you've got people that don't know what they're doing, or maybe they know what they're doing, but they've allowed themselves to, if you have 50 people in a room and or in a place and they're all doing the same thing, there's entities and there's things all, coming up, going into someone else. They don't have enough people watching. So I do agree. Like, if there's a danger there.
I mean, I've been a bit lucky to work with Shipibo shaman, just me and my friend, one-on-one. Yeah. In the Peruvian jungle, right? That was it. I couldn't, I did some of the bigger groups, but that was no good. And again, I mean, the Western mind, we like to have shortcuts. Yeah. Right. Like, give me just a pill, just give me something, and I will be done with it. And that's a trap. I have to acknowledge myself. Many things I thought I'd cleared. Oh, I did ayahuasca, I did mushroom, DMT. I'm done. No, I had an insight, like, Ram Dass. As it had, and he talked about Maharaji, his guru, and Maharaji told him, like, with LSD or any psychedelic, you're allowed to be in the house of Christ for a little bit, but then you have to come back. Yeah. Right. And then we take this experience and think we are enlightened, we are it. And then all of a sudden, we easily engage in spiritual bypassing. So also I have to say, from an esoteric occult perspective, there are dangers to your strong etheric body if you do these medicine plants or psychedelics too much. Yeah. So if somebody tells me I have 50, 60, 70 ayahuasca ceremonies, I'm like, oof, that's not a good sign. Yes. Right? Because for me, if you have a good medicine journey, you need just a couple, 1, 2. That's it. Yeah. Right. So I'm not a big fan of the repeated over and over. Mm-hmm. And I would also argue a question, let's not fall into this indigenous romanticism of romanticizing shamanism. Yeah. Right. Because I've spent a lot of time in Peru, And some of the curanderos, they take advantage of the Westerners, right?
Yeah.
Of the gringos,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they
I think it's
have a
important.
different context. And for what I realized, we have to understand our culture, our social conditioning.
Mhm.
We also need a different approach. That's why I feel like without Carl Jung, I call him an avatar. He did, especially for the Western man and woman, incredible work to combine depth psychology as a bridge to spirituality.
Yeah.
Very important, this integration process, the process of individuation before jumping maybe into Eastern spirituality or shamanic traditions.
Yeah.
So if you really know how to do the shadow work, if you can apply it in the sober state, right? Like Terence McKenna said, it's not what you do when you're on these things, on mushrooms, but when you're off them.
Off them. Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, 95% of my work was integration,
Yeah,
working with coaches and trying to understand what I was learning. And I think this is a good message because a lot of my business leader, entrepreneur friends, they have resources, so they can go to these places, and there's a whole group going and doing whether ayahuasca or whatever it is, and they have access, right? They can spend whatever.
Yeah.
And I would say that's good, but listen to Bernhard. I mean, don't think that's the journey. That's an opening. It's a portal.
You cannot. I mean, I wish I would do it, but you cannot buy your way to enlightenment. Right?
No. But look, if you've got resources, you have in some ways you have more hurdles, because what I found and what I see a lot is if you've been very successful in the material world, you have like Hawkins talks about that. There's a barrier. The more successful you've been with your ego mind, the more you trust it, and
the more you identify with it.
And so you have to, and at the end of the day, that has to be dropped.
Can I share something about that? Because I used to work back in LA. I used to also work at a high-end retreat center. Worked on A-list celebrities. Some of my clients, very rich people, I had one-on-one. You know what I mean? Also doing coaching sessions back in the days. Here's the thing of what I've seen over the 20 years working one-on-one with people is that the biggest quote-unquote cause for their suffering or depression or this is that they were following aims, goals, and desires that were not even quote-unquote their own.
Yeah.
Even though they're highly successful. 7, 8, 9, 10 figures.
Sure.
Popularity, fame. But they were based on trauma responses, meaning trying to fill a hole within.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the things we see in this world, we see like workaholics, like Elon Musk and all these driven people, like work, like do. But many of them, not all, are driven by almost like internalized, unconscious, toxic shame. So they need to create something, pursue something to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
Right. And then it creates, I'm sure you have seen this around.
I lived it. I lived it.
You see more and more like everything you achieve, it doesn't make you feel any better.
Yeah.
Right. So the key point is not necessarily that materialism is bad or the stuff is bad. No, it's just what has been your driving force.
Yeah.
That's why to ask to people sometimes, even in the US, when they come here, follow your dream, follow your desires, make it happen. But I ask the question, have you ever questioned where your desires come from?
Yeah.
And then I think what you may be alluding to, many people get in this path, then they maybe realize, oh my God, I've been living a lie. This, life I live, I don't maybe really love my wife. I don't like this work. I'm just playing something that is not me.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be harsh.
Yeah.
Disillusionment.
I was lucky you just met Anitra, but she was far advanced from me.
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah. And she held space.
Yeah.
And was very patient. And so as this happened, we've been on the journey together. And so it's been a really beautiful thing. And there was moments when my shift made her feel like, wait, because it's like, oh, I don't have to take care of any. I don't have to. I'm not like she was like looking out for me, and now it's more we're together.
Yeah.
And so that was a shift, but it's been
but it seems like
very fortunate.
Your way you were able to integrate it more, right? To kind of fuse it, right? And
well, I dedicated
and at the same time still going because I'm sure because on this path there's no progress without disillusionment.
Oh yeah,
and the thing is, people are afraid of this disillusionment because they're so attached, the attachment to everything. But if you think about the word, disillusionment is a great thing to free you from illusion.
Yeah.
It frees you to be, because when I look back and look at my life, if you would have told me that 10, 15, 20 years, I would not believe you that I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Right.
I definitely would.
And and I'm also looking back. I'm so glad. I was so hoping that I do my music thing, do the rock, nothing went on tour. You know what I mean? I was so working for it, manifesting, and I'm so glad it was ripped apart from me, including some relationship. When you're in the midst of it, you're like, oh, this sucks, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then looking back, like, hold on, that was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we are in this mindset. In the moment, we overly judge things as, oh, this is good and this is bad.
Yeah.
Not never realizing that what we perceive as something quote unquote bad leads us to something much better in the end of the day.
Yeah, and
Right.
all these things are for us, right? So they're things that, however you think about it, but we the universe set it up for us to awaken.
Yes.
So the bad is the portal. Like my trauma is my portal.
Yes.
I lean into it, and by leaning into it, things
That's
open
your
for
karmic
me.
setup.
Yeah,
Right?
and I was like, okay, well, did I really have to make it like that? I mean, like couldn't I picked a different way? But no, that's just the way it was. So that's been a great learning, and it is like, I was one of those people who, if you came to me and said, Smoke, I have this problem and whatever, I'm like, let's go get a drink. And I coped with alcohol. Like I drank a lot for a lot of years. And I realized that when I cleared, that I had a fan going off in the back of my head that was always on. And I just thought that was normal, and it would go off when I would drink.
Right.
So when I had a drink or two, I'd be like, oh, now I feel normal.
Yeah.
And then when I cleared a lot of this stuff, the fan went off.
Right.
And then I didn't need a drink.
Yeah.
It just kind of fell away.
Yeah.
So it was, but it's really interesting. You have to be curious, right? Like you have to be like, why did I do this? Why do I react this way?
Curiosity is the key point.
Yeah.
To self, because when we are very identified, we automatically externalize, right?
Yeah.
Best with shadow work. The greatest quote from Carl Jung is, I'm just paraphrasing, the one who irritates us, or anybody who irritates us, gives us a good insight into ourselves.
Yeah.
But mostly we gossip, we talk smack about others. I'm not taking myself out of the equation. I'm still get triggered by people, annoyed, right? I can even, project on them all the time. But the key point is like, why, this curiosity, why is this person why am I getting so upset what this person is doing, saying it doesn't matter? What does it say about me? Where is it hitting me?
Yeah.
Right? Where's the entry point?
Yeah.
That's really, once you turn that around.
Yeah. The friction is the portal, right? It's the, okay, well that's, all right. What is that?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. It's really fascinating.
So that's what leads you more to your true self. Because then you realize you have all these mechanical conditioned programmed reactions, right? And it's a waste of energy, of your life force, right? When you get thrown off by other people or project on them and whatnot, and like this and that, right? And then that leads you to your shadow and what you need to integrate. Shadow meaning like, for people who are maybe not aware of it, it's just anything that's unconscious.
Yeah.
Right. So it could be negative quote unquote parts we don't like to see within ourselves but project on others. And the best example is the political spectrum.
Sure.
The left projects on the right projects on the left. That's kind of what the game keeps happening.
And they just keep at it and it triggers, and that's a great one to see where you are, because
exactly
it's really easy to get upset about it. It's really fascinating. The fact that the things that get to you are the things that can be your portal is like one of my greatest learnings, can I share
a little example?
Yeah.
With my journey, because I come from the opposite end. So I have my journey, the adventure of my journey, I realized no materialistic achievement, money, stuff, things will ever bring me happiness. So I have a certain detachment, right? Yeah. But to the point of I was rejecting it, right? So that was my shadow. For example, I told you I'm working at this high-end retreat center in Malibu as a massage therapist, and there was another massage therapist who also taught yoga there, and he would always be very, what I call him, like an ass kisser, very slimy, just to get clients, and he would get them for their, he was also already hosting a retreat in Peru, and you know what I mean? And he was doing pretty well for himself, had his own, thing going on, making good money. And I just would talk smack behind his back, like, what an ass kiss at this and that, and just talk shit about him and all of that, right?
Yeah.
Like just talking down on him. And then being in front of him, all nice, of course, right? So really like that kind of type of thing. And then, as I delved deeper into Jung's work and I had to really applying shadow work to myself, I realized, oh my God, I'm projecting on him.
Yeah.
Right? I'm projecting my shadow on him. I have to work with this. What is it about him? And then in my own inner inquiry, I remember this aha moment. It's like, I am jealous of him. I am envious.
Yeah.
I want what he has.
Yeah.
But I cannot allow myself to have because I think that's wrong, that's greedy. So if I would be like him, expand myself, be more embraceful for like making more money, I have this unconscious belief then I would be like him.
Yeah.
Ask his greedy and whatnot. So I had all these unconscious core beliefs, wrong beliefs, and my projections were based on unconscious envy and jealousy.
Yeah.
Right. So there was a big, oh shit, I had to take responsibility for that. And that was my turning point.
Yeah.
It's like, no, how can I also do my work? Because I had the hardest time at the beginning to charge actually for my services.
Yeah.
Right? There was just this like weird like conflict. Shouldn't be of service? Shouldn't this be? You know what I mean? Dealing with this all false spiritual beliefs, but not understanding that even money is energy, and there needs to be an exchange, right?
Yeah.
There needs to be like flowing and going, and I had to really work on my own inner core beliefs and self-value to like, no, this is who I am, this is my experience, this is what I charge. And
well, if you lived in an ashram or some mountain where and the village would take care of you and give you food and
that's a different story.
That's a different story. You're living in you're living in the world where you have bills and
exactly
you need a car.
But there was a good there was a very like confrontation of my own shadow, and I see this a lot nowadays. You can see now I can see other people's shadow easier because I've seen it within myself. When people get upset about, even like when people project on rich people, you know what I mean? Like as if every rich person is a psychopath or something, which is not true. You know that, right?
Yeah.
The point is like we project what onto others, right? What we actually truly want for ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And I have I don't know, thousands of acquaintances and lots of friendly relations, that are leaders and business people. And you get the spectrum like in any other part of the world, like any other segment of the world. But a lot of them are, they're good people. They're probably, like YPO is a group I've spent a lot of my life in, and it's been really important. And it's a very positive overall field. But like most people are like, if I calibrated, it's like the typical is like in the 300s of Hawkins, right? Yeah, of Hawkins. It's like in the 300s. Some are a little, right on there. So that's a really good field, right? And they're employing thousands of people and productively, and they're taking care of their families. And if you're in YPO, you're giving back and you're trying to figure out how to be better people. And so like they're on a path of some sort. So, but there's exceptions, and there's people that, they make unbelievable amounts of money and they can't see anything else, right? So you get a range of it, but it's just like that's the path. I use the Johari window. I don't know if you know that, but that's like I think it's big in coaching, right? That's why I learned it through YPO. The Johari window is the 4 quadrants. The quadrant that I know and you know. Right. The quadrant I know and you don't know. Right. The quadrant that you know and I don't know. So it's blind to me. It's in my unconscious. And the quadrant that neither of us know. Right. And as we move things from those unknown quadrants to the known quadrants, we're gaining consciousness. And I use that as a frame for how I think about it, just because a lot of my audience understands that, right? Because we've used it a lot in.
Yeah, you got to use that framework that works.
Right? Yeah, but it really makes sense. And so the more we can move from the unknown to the known that we know, the more consciousness we gain. It's just a different way of thinking about consciousness, but it's the same process. Yeah.
No, it's great. Yeah. Now the word consciousness itself means to become aware, to be more aware. Yeah. Right. To know more, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you've done a lot of work with, I know you've got a class and a whole thing you're teaching about the dark forces and what's happening in the world, and maybe let's spend a few minutes on that. I don't like to dwell on it, but I think it's important for people to be aware, right? Because it's a real thing, and this is not just like, you know, live in my Zen garden and everyone is love and peace. Although I love that, and that's what I desire. That's where I spend my energy, is on positive love. And you know, I made a decision a long time ago. I was never one of those like social media guys who was like, you know, shit posting and stuff, but I was, you know, I would criticize and judge and stuff. And pretty quickly I was like, wait a minute, I'm only going to put out things that I believe are positive, that are helpful to people, because we don't need any more doom and gloom, and we don't need anything. That being said, it's you know, there's inversion happening all over the world. In our society, we have inversion. We have, you know, what is obviously right and true and good, you know, love supporting, is being inverted as not that. And the others, you know, things that are obviously not good, not love, the opposite, is being touted as good. And so that's part of what is happening. And I think it's a disservice to anyone not to be aware of it.
Yes. Let me put it this way. So, number one, we're dealing with duality, David Hawkins, right? But you don't want to take the duality bypass either. A lot of people, I've done myself, the intellectual duality bypass, right? I'm like, oh, it's just, you know, but understanding peace and love is one duality. We cannot ignore what's called evil.
Yeah.
Evil is real.
Yeah.
Right?
And how do you define evil?
I would define it as Aurobindo does it, ignorance.
Yeah.
Ignorance. Right? You have to understand that, you know, we can approach from different levels, but all is one. All that comes from God. Nothing can exist out of God.
Yeah.
So good and evil is not even a true duality.
Mm-hmm.
Evil is an aspect of God, unconscious ignorance on the lower levels, on the planes of creation, right? So there are various things people react to evil or the dark side or bad things, like you just mentioned. Number one, there's the denial. Dark doesn't exist. The new age, right? I just love and light, think positive thoughts. I don't want to avoid it. You know, the more I focus on it, the more I give it power. And like, if I don't focus on it, I will go away. That's a big deception itself, which I would be said planted by quote unquote the devil himself. That idea, right? The other extreme, which is also unhealthy, what you just alluded to, is doom and gloom. Right, the negativity everywhere. Oh my God, the world is ending. It's going to shit. You know, they're enslaving us. I see this a lot in the quote unquote truth movement, to the point of that Earth is a prison planet. You know, insanity. That's the other extreme.
Yeah,
right. Both is a misunderstanding of evil. So, for me, I was always interested in like also what's happening in the world. You have to look beyond appearances, right, and beyond our wishful thinking, rose-colored glasses, and you know, if you put it in the context of really what's going on in the world from a higher perspective, as we're in the Kali Yuga, it's important to understand the Yuga cycles. It's really the darkest point of human consciousness right now, as we're ascending to the higher.
Unfortunately, I learned from you that we're at the end of it, and that so we're heading into a good phase, but the transition could be 1,000 years. So it's not.
No, but that's why we're here for a reason.
Yeah,
right? And also understanding we're coming back around and around. We are eternal, right? This is just the vehicle for now, right? And we all chose to be. You are being activated right now as we, you know what I mean? So it's all part of the plan, so to speak. But we need to play our part. But that's when evil and the dark forces, as Aurobindo said, have the strongest grip on humanity, right? And that's where also humanity is mostly identified strongly with the lower nature, egoic consciousness. Yeah. And there's a spectrum to evil. You know, speaking of David Hawkins, I like what he says with the you know, the map of consciousness. Yeah. Right. It's not like, oh, this is good, this is evil. It's like a phenomenon, right? It's like, you know, at one point this is very cold, cold, hot, hot. When do we decide what is cold and what is hot? It's just a spectrum, right? So evil, when we think of, we have all aspects of evil within ourselves. That's the core of shadow work, right? To face it within ourselves, at least the potential, right? There's a reason, for example, let's give you some real life example, why the highest gay porn consumption is right around the Bible Belt in the Midwest, where they project on the gays and think they're sin, right? There's a reason why Grindr has the highest use when there's a conservative conference in Phoenix and whatnot, right? So I'm not to single out that one group. I'm just saying
Right.
what we strongly project onto others
Yeah.
is our own unreduction, and who knows what all these people who virtue signal are doing at night behind closed doors, right?
100%.
So
100%.
there's that, right? So
Yeah.
we need to acknowledge it within ourselves. I can see in myself, I have certain ways and my own hypocrisy, something. Absolutely. I need to be aware. I have to have the humility to see that within myself. So that's just one level. But it really struck me when Sri Aurobindo, who I consider the last truly enlightened avatar, said the same thing as Rudolf Steiner, that this time we need to face what both call the problem of evil.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot avoid it.
Yeah.
And understanding evil as a cosmic teaching function, because that's what it is for the evolution of consciousness.
Yeah.
Right. Even the esoteric teaching saw the dark forces as teachers, so to speak, that
Mhm.
show us where our work is to be done. Right.
Yeah.
We cannot avoid it. We cannot look past it. Right.
Yeah. Because it's not real at a certain level, but it's absolutely real in this realm.
Exactly.
In
That's
this,
what I said.
in this density.
That's
And-
spiritual bypassing. When we say on a high level, only God exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true from a higher level. We are not there.
Right, but we're here right now.
Yeah, here right now we did deal with, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Even all is one. People are like, yeah, all is one. Even like you and the most evil pedophile are one, right? But we still need to differentiate, right? And do the action within and without. Another big mistake is, see the truth of movement, that we need just trying to eradicate evil. Just arrest all the pedophiles, put them in prison, death penalty, and that's it. We're done with it. That's not how it works. That's not how you eradicate evil.
No, and that one, it's something like my childhood trauma. I had a pedophile grandfather, grandmother who was in on it with him.
Mm-hmm.
They decided the kids were easier, less risky.
Yeah.
You know, the grandkids were less risky than other people.
Yeah.
And then, so I lived with that as a child, and then they got me to bring my friends over.
Yeah.
And then I had to live with that and what happened to some of my friends. And when I remembered it, it was horrific and it was traumatic and it was really, emotional. And then I was really angry. And then I got to a point of, okay. And Danny, who we mentioned earlier, is a great coach, lives here in the village. And she helped me, and she had me write letters to everybody. I wrote letters over and over again. She said, just keep writing letters, say whatever's on your mind, whatever you feel, until you get to a letter of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And it took me it didn't take that long. 3 or 4 letters each to the people that did the worst things. And I burned them in kind of ceremony, and they would write another one. Right. And that helped a lot. Like that got me past the anger. And then I was like, oh, I forgiveness. And then I got to a point where there's nothing to forgive. It was part of the awakening journey. I understand that. So my greatest teacher are those grandparents who did that to their grandchildren. Yeah. And that's, it sounds vulnerable, but it's not if you've healed, right? It's like, I don't share it all the time because it's like, it's not.
No, it's not. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I've been, even before the whole for me, the Epstein thing is like the tip of the iceberg. I remember back in the early 2000s, I was researching in depth elite pedophilia, child trafficking. I mean, I had some satanic ritual abuse victims on, podcasts and all of it. It's dark out there.
It's dark.
Extremely dark, right?
Yeah, it's real.
And it's real. And I understand why people don't also like it, because it brings up too much. It's too disturbing. Right?
Yeah. And my grandmother had power. Like she could freeze a grown man with her hand. Wow. I saw her do it a bunch of times. Yeah. She could make your memory disappear. She had these incredible powers. Yeah. So I saw that too. And I was like, all that I blocked out, right?
Because the thing is, it's also not so many people like, oh, the Epstein files, why not any arrest? I understand the sentiment, but I would also, the collective consciousness is not ready to face that. Yeah. You have to understand a big part of shadow work, or understand Jung, he's very spiritual in the sense that whatever we have not faced within ourselves manifests as evil in the outside world. Yeah. It's chaos, it's war, it's abuse. Yeah. Right? We're not on a level of consciousness
it's a reflection of where we are.
There's and integrate within ourselves.
Yeah. Well, but the disclosure and the fact that the Epstein files are now in the consciousness,
that helps,
is actually saying that we are getting more ready, right?
It's
like
more than it was in the past. I'm actually surprised. Yeah, exactly, that it came out. Exactly. So, but it doesn't. We're still externalizing everything. Right. Right. because you talk about elite pedophilia, on high levels, but this is a whole topic in itself. But then you see millions of people saving images on Instagram from little children in swimsuits.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's people have dark closets.
Yeah.
Not calling anybody out, but like we all have, especially topic of sex as a whole, topic in itself, right? And the dark shadow of sexuality and all of this. But what I'm trying to get back at is what I realized for myself, and that's the work I'm doing also with my wife and talking about the programs you hinted at, I realized also over the years, we need a more grounded psycho-spiritual approach. And psycho-spiritual work, it's a term I've been very hyped. But the way I see it, when you do psychological work, as you're done, you need a quote-unquote map of your psyche, right? You understand your ego structure, maybe subpersonalities, inner child, wounding, right, shadow, all these parts. So by the same logic, a lot of people, when you engage in spiritual work, even like I would consider medicine plants as somewhat spiritual work, or meditation, or prayer, and all of this, you open yourself up to the higher realms. You need to understand the spiritual forces you're subjected to.
Yeah.
Because the biggest illusion we have is that we think we identify with our thoughts, our emotions, all of this, not realizing that the mind is porous. There's constantly forces, beings, thought forms flowing through us at all times. The mind is not isolated. It's like the brain doesn't even produce thoughts. That's
bunch of antennas.
materialistic. We're just receivers. You know what I mean? So we never question what's coming from. So the point is differentiation. I think the future we're moving to, because if you just do psychology, you kind of end up in childhood with your parents or grandparents, right? If you just do spiritual work, you might have some experiences, but you can easily spiritual bypass, dissociate, get out of body. You need to bring both together, right? And so in my work, I want to we dive deep into the psychological work, but understanding the spiritual one. Both they're malevolent beings, which have been written in all esoteric spiritual traditions, spiritual forces that are very tempting, very deceiving. They're not this obvious evil, but they tempt us, they distract us and whatnot. And there's obviously divine angelic beings as well. But they act according to their own laws. They respect free will. It's not like they're bailing us out or saving us, but they can assist us.
You have to ask for help, though.
Exactly, for us to help, and then be very discerning what is coming through, for example, right?
Yeah.
So in this work, like I'm doing one program with my wife, Embodied Soul Awakening, is more overall psycho-spiritual program, and the one I offer is Mastering Spiritual Warfare, because we are in a spiritual war.
Yeah.
Right? There is a war of our minds that's happening through us, over us.
Yeah.
Right? And people get maybe offended by the word war, but even as Sri Aurobindo said, if you're really sincere in the inner work, you realize it becomes a battle. Battle of force within you, right? It's not easy, right? There's a resistance. And, and he made a good point. The more you do the inner work, the more you bring forth your true self, the more you expand your consciousness, automatically you become more aware of other forces of humanity, of the larger collective consciousness, of archetypes, as Carl Jung would say. So naturally, it becomes even a bigger war, because you become like he said, carry the burden of the world by extension, because you have enlarged your being.
Yeah, you can't not see it once you see it.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's a natural progression, because I think the deception we have, or how easily ego hijacks this process, is just, I want to just awaken, I just want to have peaceful life, right? And I've seen it so many times, like Laura and I, my wife, we talked about this other day. A lot of people like the idea of shadow work, they like the idea of awakening, they like the idea of a spiritual life, but don't realize what it actually entails and can bring up.
Totally. Look, I like the idea of being a world champion wrestler. I was a wrestler in high school and college, but to be it, it's not easy. And actually, I actually give credit to that sport, like wrestling.
That's great.
In my spiritual journey, because of the discipline, and I took that discipline to business and entrepreneur. Like if I had to do something, I just figured out I'll do it. And you don't. There's no shortcut. Like you got to put the work in. And now this is harder in many ways. But it's the same principle. It's like you have to, and it has to be. It's not like one time. It's not a retreat. What do we do here? What's our daily practice? I mean, you see my hot tub right there, and I've got the sauna in the back there, and my routine is I'm up at 4. I do meditation. I go do a sauna. I do continue my meditation. I then come out here. I do it again.
Yeah.
And then I write in my journal. I write a lot of poetry and
Beautiful
stuff. And for a while, I couldn't even talk about this stuff except through poetry.
Yeah.
Like, and I never, I just started putting them out there, like just writing poems, and it was a way to communicate it.
Yeah.
But I do that every day.
Yeah.
And it's not just the morning. I mean, I'm now at more of a, like, I would say more in a contemplative, meditative state all the time, because it becomes not just to sit down. It just, of course, it's how you be, how you are, right? Yeah. But you don't get there without having some discipline.
No, you have to engage the will.
Yeah.
But what David Hawkins talked about, the spiritual will is important.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can also be able to sit with discomfort.
Yeah.
Right. And not escape and all these kind of things. So there needs to be an engagement of the will. Even like for me, it's all about when I'm at alignment of divine will, like something, give my personal will to the higher will. Like my daily prayer is not actually wishing for something, like, how can I be your best instrument? I'm very a student of the Bhagavad Gita, the yoga of divine works, and give it up to God and wherever I'm being led, right? But I still need to engage the will. And, the mother, Sri Aurobindo's spiritual collaborator, said like the importance of developing concentration, focus, attention, and will, because you need to have developed a strong will before you can give it to the divine.
Yeah.
We have the Western, we think surrendered, when people talk about, or even Sri Aurobindo talks about surrender to the divine, in the Western world, it's like defeat or like passivity, non-action, just letting God do everything, do for you. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You need to have a strong will in order to become truly God's instrument, to manifest his will uniquely through you.
That's what I liked about Gurdjieff and the Fourth Way.
Yeah.
I think I like certain aspects of it. Like some of it, I think he
can be harsh,
pretty rough. Like there seems to be like there's some love, there's a little bit of love around. It would be nice, right? But I did like his. He taught me some good things in my journey, just like learning about it, and just having everything dedicated to your mind, your emotion, your body, to becoming aware of the subtle energies.
Yeah.
And you can't get there without like actually having a balanced mind that is actually and it takes it's like a muscle that we didn't know existed.
Yes.
That you
learn, build the spiritual organs.
Yeah, right? You learn how it works, and then you're like, oh, okay. Then you can't just because you know about it doesn't mean you can do it.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So Evil exists. You teach this course, and it's what are things people should think about? I mean, obviously, the main work is your own work. It's embodying your own consciousness. It's expanding it, and as you do that, you're not as susceptible to this stuff.
Yes.
Right? Is that the
yes? And everybody will be targeted by these forces.
Yeah.
At some journey, even at high levels. Even Jesus, the Buddha, had to face it.
Of course. Yeah.
So here's two things.
Yeah.
Number one, I wrote about it recently. It's also Robert Moore talked about it, and Ken Wilber too. That we have a sort of like what he called a flatland spirituality.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff has been like diminished, diluted, taken out, maybe not out of like to deceive, but the typical, like Ram Dass said, we take like these teachings and trying to form it into for the Western mind. How can I use this for my daily life, right? And then we diminish it, kind of like neuter it almost, so to speak. And there's certain things that have been taken out. We have like, almost this Eckhart Tolle type of Adyashanti, Deepak Chopra, like Oprah-style spirituality most people get into, which is not bad. I love Eckhart Tolle. I love listening to him. Great insights.
It can be a great step.
Exactly. So I'm quoting them all the time. But it's flat. It's like Robert Moore said, almost like we have a Apple Store type of spirituality nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So there are three things that have been taken out or de-emphasized. Number one is the spiritual hierarchies. Mm-hmm. Understanding there are spiritual forces and beings affecting us. All esoteric traditions teach us, both the good guys and the bad guys, so to speak. So we need to know how to navigate this. That was taught in all the traditions. Number two, evil. The teaching, understanding evil, confronting evil, seeing as a teaching function was also inherent in all complete esoteric traditions. Right? And number three, which David Hawkins is bringing back, levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
It's very, his work can be very controversial, right? With his levels of consciousness.
Right.
There are different levels of consciousness in humanity, right?
Sure.
And that was almost even, and that's why also this idealistic idea that, there will be collective awakening. There won't be a collective awakening anytime soon because there are different levels of.
I like how he describes it. It's like you got preschoolers, you got middle schoolers, you got high schoolers, you got postgraduates.
And that was more integrated in the past.
Yeah.
Now, even the caste system of the Indians, which has become, more distorted, used for discrimination, that's based on a truth.
Right, because we're all made of the same stuff, but we're at different levels of understanding.
Exactly. And it's not about judgment, high or low. That's when the ego hijacks it. But like understanding, you don't judge a child for being a child, right?
No. And if you were born in Haiti or Gaza or someplace,
exactly,
there's a reason for that. People don't like to talk about that, but it's
that's very his work on calibrating different countries is fascinating too.
I know.
It explains a lot, but it goes against the social activists, right?
But if you want to negotiate with some, military, Islamic, militant group, if you don't understand what you're dealing with, you're incapable of navigating that.
Yeah. So these three things are important to understand. Understanding evil, that's part of any spiritual teaching, and the spiritual hierarchies, which we're not aware of what is influencing us. So if my attempt is to bring this grounded psycho-spiritual approach to fuse it all together. But I approach also a very strong foundation. The most important thing, even in my first lecture in this course, I say is, who do you think you are? Meaning, know thyself. This is the most important part. Know self-knowledge. Question yourself, right? Where do your thoughts come from? Where do your desires come from? Your beliefs. Who are you really? Right? That's the first step to any path. Shadow work, psychological work, inner work.
Because whatever the evil is,
observe yourself.
It knows your blind spots.
Yes.
So
that's the most important part.
If we have blind spots, it's going to easily.
It's very subtle. I can see these forces, and it's known to all esoteric traditions. They call Aurobindo called them the adverse forces, hostile, occult forces, hidden forces, archonic forces, right?
Yeah.
Or the Jinn in the Sufism, or many other names given, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. They're all pointing to the same. But yes, they know you. If you don't know yourself, they know your psyche better than you know yourself. They tag into what I call entry points, right? So whatever your weakness is, they try to emphasize it. Wherever there's trauma, they try to emphasize that, right? Whatever there's a shadow part, that's where they tag in and feed off and emphasize it. So.
Because we're mechanical if we aren't aware of it.
Exactly.
So go back to Gurdjieff.
Mechanicalness.
We're just reacting.
You're just reacting
if we're not aware of it.
Yeah.
And if you are aware, you at least have the ability to recognize it.
Yeah.
And make a choice.
Exactly. That's the good point. The point is also what Aurobindo talked. What I need to integrate as part of my nature and what I need to reject.
Yeah.
Right. That's a differentiation. And it's not easy. You need a certain level of conscious, because it's not an intellectual process. Right. So the more we need to observe ourselves, like Gurdjieff said, first we need to start before even trying to change yourself, just observe yourself.
Yeah.
That's the foundation, being able to establish the inner witness.
Yeah.
And if you go deeper with this process, at some point, you will sense other things and forces coming from the outside, which you mistook for your own. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why, by the way, even we are influenced by the forces all the time. Entity attachment is not that common, but influences constantly, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of entities out there.
There's a whole world out there we're not aware of, right?
Yeah.
We just live in this ignorant ego consciousness, limited by our five sensory perception. But they tag into that. So what we need to be doing, and that's what I teach you, we need to close our entry points. Where, so we bring forth more true self, we raise our frequency level of consciousness, and then less subjected. That's how we actually gain more free will.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are manipulated by forces we have no awareness of constantly, right?
Yep.
And so from the esoteric traditions, they saw these forces, quote unquote, evil forces, dark forces, as teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what do they teach? Well, they show you where you have to do your work.
Yeah.
Because they only get you where your blind spot is, where your weakness is, whatever it may be in your life, specifically to you. So They were seen as that, and then once you take more ownership of your stuff, take responsibility, you move on to the next stage, right? But we need to have an understanding of what these forces are, how the influences are, and all complete spiritual esoteric teachings were teaching that in the past.
Well, that's one of the practical things that, is controversial, because some people can't accept the muscle testing and the kinesiology and what it shows you. But as soon as I got that, I was like, whoa, you mean we can test anything?
Yeah.
And so, Hawkins' whole thing about, 50% of the teachers are probably not in truth, integrity. So always test.
Yeah.
Like I still do business. I do M&A. I sell companies around the world. I sold a brewery in Nepal last summer to Carlsberg. In fact, my whole journey started, I went to Nepal for a business trip, and I got to go to Buddha's birthplace, and my friend sat down and prayed, and I did too, and I asked for peace and love, and that opened up everything that was in between peace and love. So like that started my journey. But I don't even engage in a dealing with someone if they don't test integrity.
Yeah.
So it saves me a lot of time.
And it's good for you, but keep in mind, I think Hawkins could emphasize that more, and he did it always at the end of the book, that not everybody is able to muscle test.
Right.
You have to be up 200 already.
You have to be about 200, and you have to be unattached to the outcome.
Yeah, the bias can easily.
Yeah, for sure. But if you are,
exactly, it works.
It's amazing, and like you can test anything. Like, I have a whole not-for-profit project I'm doing, which I'll share later. But it's I'm basically like he said in Power versus Force, and he said in I've watched every lecture he did. Right, I subscribe, so I listen to every single lecture multiple times. So because I was just fascinated by this whole thing. But his whole point was, this is opening up a whole realm of research and knowledge that is accessible to humanity that we never had, right? And his intention was that we continue it. Who's doing it? I mean, I know people do it individually. So anyway, I'm using Claude and building it. I built an app, and I'm putting it into a not-for-profit, and I'm going to invite people who are integrous, who want to be part of a community, to continue the work. He tested everything, but he's been gone more than a decade.
Yeah.
And so, everything from movies to politicians to whatever it is, but you can, so it creates a panel of integrous testers, and everybody does their own testing and puts their results in. And if we get 9 out of 10, then we'll publish a result in the app. And I don't know if I can get enough people to do it, but I think it's a way to carry the work forward. I think for the benefit of everyone.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Have you listened to my interview with Daniel? Because he was
one of the testers.
He was. He worked with him personally.
Yeah. I want to meet him. Yeah. I know Morgan, who has Grace Grove. Do you know Morgan?
No.
It's a plant medicine retreat nearby. And he was one of the testers. He came here to study for Hawkins. But I'd love to meet him sometime and talk to him.
Because I think he had some valid criticism about David Hawkins as well.
Yeah.
To a degree, you know what I mean? We need to, he's also a great man, and even with some of the testing, in truth versus falsehood, I think it was, you know what I mean? Maybe take with a grain of salt, But overall, his model works, and I agree with you that it should be more developed, actually, more even scientifically approached, studied, and taken from there, because he's left a tremendous body of work.
Yeah, it's a tremendous body of work, and it stopped. No one's been doing it, right? So I'm trying to create a mechanism that's not to make money on, but just that everyone can benefit from.
That's great.
And you can only join if you're integrous. So the community would test new members.
Okay.
And if they test above 200, then they can be part of it. So I think it'll work, but I have to get enough people to do it.
Experiment,
it's an experiment.
Awesome.
But that's a good example of, AI is not good or evil. It's a tool. Exactly. And so I would never have done this project because it would have cost me $100,000 to hire developers and do all this stuff. And I wouldn't have done it before, but I'm like, wait a minute, I can build anything I want. I just own a software company. I know enough about tech, but I'm not a programmer.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I could do this. So I wrote a spec. I went back and forth, and then I actually hired a programmer to take the spec and turn it into something. I have the first version now, and it's a great use of technology.
Yeah.
You know, it's a way to, you would never do that if you didn't have AI.
Yeah.
You know, now I think there's a lot of risk with AI because people don't use it consciously, and it can do a lot of
You
things.
see it even from a spiritual warfare perspective. That's as Rudolf Steiner talked about Ahriman, right?
Yeah.
The forces, there are beings and forces that use these machines as well.
Yeah.
Right? And make us more dependent on it. And the way I see it, I'm with you. I'm not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. You know, we are using technology right now to do this and help other
Yeah.
people, right? Absolutely. I even use AI here and there, but we can easily lose ourselves within it, you know, because the way I see it, when you even look at the Kali, we have this under illusion that we are on the pinnacle of human evolution. No, 12,000 years ago, we were even had more spiritual powers than we had now. We went to the descent down because everything works in cycles, right?
Yeah.
That's what people, it's not linear.
Yeah.
In this lower state of consciousness, descent of consciousness in the Kali Yuga, and we have externalized technology at the cost of activating our inner technology. And now we are being asked to activate what I call our organic technology, so to speak, because the more we outsource to AI, and it's very tempting that you start to question everything, every question without using your own mind. I can see it in myself. There's a temptation behind it, right?
Yeah, but it's wrong a lot, and because it's been trained.
That's true.
It's been trained on a lot of.
Many people take it as the oracle.
Yeah, and it's been trained on all the false narratives and everything.
Exactly.
But like a good use. Like I had probably, I don't know. It was 300 because that was the maximum you could do. I had 300 PDFs of spiritual documents.
Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishad, different teachings, Meister Eckhart, all these different teachings. And that I did a big search. I found stuff, got all that, and I loaded into a notebook, which is Google's, AI, private AI thing. You can load everything in. And then I was able to like do all kinds of really cool querying and analysis on it. That was like, well, what are all these guys saying that's in common? And it's only using what I put in there.
Yeah.
So I know the sources. I know that generally they're all integrous, and it was really cool. Like I put the Aramaic translated Bible and the King James Bible, and I was able to like compare the two. Right, like Hawkins did that at one point, but I was able to like go at a detail you would be very hard to do by just reading it and looking back and forth. So anyway, there's really cool uses of it that used correctly. I just finished Greg Braden's little retreat he did here in Sedona, and his whole thing is pure human, and his big concern is, it's fine to use these things, but then to start implanting them and putting these chips and technologies into us, we are giving up our divine abilities.
The way I can see that, but the way I see it, it's already influencing through these other forces.
Yeah.
On a what I call hyperdimensional or spiritual level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to understand from the Steiner perspective, Rudolf Steiner, everything has consciousness, everything has a spiritual being attached to it. Everything, even this microphone, this computer, everything what we use. I had this really fascinating man on my podcast, and I featured him a couple of times, Thomas Meyer. Fascinating man. I don't know if some people are ready to his work, but he wrote a fascinating book about the spiritual consequences of the COVID vaccine on spirit, life, and on the spirit, soul, and life after death, right? But he is very deeply versed in anthroposophy and communicates with elemental spirits and mental beings, nature spirits, right?
Yeah.
And he can verify from the Steiner perspective that even technological gadget have beings in them that affect us. So whatever you expose yourself, right, whatever you watch on social media or you take in, you're being infused with the being at the same time.
Yeah.
It kind of puts you in a trance.
Yeah.
So the point is not being afraid of it, but developing more conscious relationship to it and being really aware, as Gurdjieff would say as well, what impressions you subject yourself to, are you taking in?
Oh,
and I think that's the danger nowadays. And maybe not for you because you're not very much on social media, but a lot of people just mechanically taking everything in, right?
When you see a murder in a movie, or a murder in person, your subconscious doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
You're seeing violence. And so you think about all the media and all the things that are out there. When I like in my journey, when I started to understand that, I was like, wait a minute, I don't need Fox News and all this stuff. I don't want any of that coming in. And I started like putting on Hawkins and Sri Aurobindo and whatever, anything I could find, the Bhagavad Gita. We were there's some beautiful, audibles.
Yeah.
And I would put those on at night, and I would go to sleep, and that's what was playing.
Exactly. Beautiful.
And I did that every night for the last literally 4 years. Now, I don't listen every night, but
Gotcha.
if I'm going to have something playing,
Yeah.
it's going to be teachings.
Yeah.
And people don't think about it,
but I think that's the danger, nowadays, especially younger generation.
Yeah.
I think we're just so subjected to this. They lose their attention span, they lose their will.
Yeah.
Right. The focus, they're easily getting programmed. I think that's more the quote unquote challenge and danger I see,
100%,
especially for parents nowadays raising children.
And you get entrained, and the games. I got to tour one of the big, giant, multi-billion-dollar game companies as a private tour with CEOs, and they were, they're one of the big games. It's violence and everything. I asked the CEO. I said, I didn't do it in front of everyone because I'm not there to, judge or embarrass him. But I'm like, how do you guys think about, the violence and these kids that are playing these games for long periods of time, and they're killing people to steal a car or do whatever, do the thing in the game. And he's like, yeah, we think a lot about that, but our games aren't as violent as others. And then one of the president of one of the divisions, she said, oh, I don't let my kids play these.
Yeah, but the same with big social media. I think some big developer on Facebook or even Instagram, or they don't let their own children use these apps.
Yeah. So what does that tell you? Yeah.
Even what's his name? Steve Jobs didn't let his own children use the iPad.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So and it's so easy. Like hand them the iPad, so they'll be quiet.
Yeah.
And
that's a temptation.
What are they learning? What's it doing to their brains? I don't know. I haven't paid attention to the time, but anything else you'd like to jump into or talk about or wrap or
that was lovely. We could probably go forever.
Oh yeah. Hopefully we can continue our dialogue, whether it's on camera or not.
I think it was a pleasure to meet you. It's great. It's interesting. We almost come from opposite ends, so to speak, right? And it's about integration and navigating these times. These are intense times. So I agree with you. We need to keep the spirit up, right? We all have our role. Yeah, I definitely see myself more archetypal of the spiritual warrior, right? It's been these kind of topics diving deep for the past 20, 30 years. And I feel, my intention is really to let people know that we need to have more holistic, integral approach of psycho-spiritual work, right?
Yeah, I think it's a great message. And we all, look, we're all coming at it from different places, everybody, but we need to help each other.
Yeah.
And because no one's doing this alone. We're all in this together.
Yeah, I like the word interdependence.
Yeah.
We're too much, even like when we pursue but we like to be independent. I want to be independent. I want to be sovereign. And there's something to be said about sovereignty. But then when the ego hijacks it again, we don't realize that, no, everything is one. We're interdependent, right? We all so really having more for gratitude in everyday life. That's the key point. And, if something for the listeners to give to, always question, whenever you pursue something, is this really what you want, right?
Yeah.
Is it coming from a true self? Is it a deeper drive? Or is it coming from something else? Or maybe just some conditioning, some mechanical automated response? Because we need to become more aligned with who we truly are.
Yvonne taught me, he said this early on, and I didn't understand it at first, but now I feel like I do, which is follow your energy. If it gives you energy, if doing whatever the thing is gives you, it feels
enthusiasm, right?
Enthusiasm.
It's like what's his name? Joseph Campbell. Follow your bliss. What excites you, right?
If it excites you and it brings you up, that's telling you, that's something higher telling us, do that.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it's a no. It's a hard no. Like if it you're on the fence, you're not sure I should do this or take this job or do this thing. Don't.
Sometimes, I would. There's some nuance to it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, even Robert, when we follow your bliss, if you have addiction issues, you're probably heroin. I love it.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
No, but I'm saying we all have. And the other thing, sometimes I have to say, even though myself, things that that didn't feel good is discomfort. Sometimes you need to follow that as well. I give you a quick example.
Yeah.
Because when I started my journey, I was become a prolific writer and people became aware of my work 10, 15 years ago. All of a sudden I was invited to a podcast, I was at a conference, they paid me flights here and there. I had so much fear. I didn't want to do this. It was uncomfortable. I had extreme fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
Like if I would have just listened to that, it doesn't feel good. I would have just like, no, I'm not going to do it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had like, no, I have to face that fear.
Yeah.
To speak publicly. You know, for example, I just give that example. So it's finding that nuance. If it's a, you know, what one of my teachers said as well, like there's a positive resistance or negative resistance, right? Positive resistance is in a sense when like you have your own stuff coming up which you need to look up and face that fear, and negative resistance is clearly no, this is not aligned with my path.
Yeah.
So being able to differentiate the both, that's can be tricky, but that's the nuance.
Yeah, that's good. Good nuance. Yeah. Well, thank you. I so much appreciate you joining me, and it's a great pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.